بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. We said that our main discussion in epistemology or theory of knowledge is about reality of truth and how we can establish truth. What makes a proposition true and how we can verify that. We said we don't have that much discussion about conceptions or tasawwurat or concepts or mafahim. They're referring almost to the same thing. They have no truth or false positions or values. Also, we are not that much concerned about ilm huduri directly, although we very much benefit from ilm huduri, but ilm huduri itself, it doesn't need verification because knowledge is achieved by presence of what is known for the knower. حضور المعلوم عند العالم. Our focus is on علم حصولی تصدیقی, conceptual knowledge in the form of proposition. Okay? So, we said the idea which has been common among philosophers before Islam and after Islam up to the 19th century has been the idea of correspondence theory, that truth is a matter of correspondence between the judgment in the proposition and the external reality. So if we say sun is greater than earth or earth is greater than sun, we can establish this by checking the external reality. If our judgment is corresponding to what is outside, then this is true. Otherwise, it is false. Then we said that some philosophers in the West, starting with 19th century and then in the 20th century, because they didn't have hope that they can establish truth in this way, so they try to introduce other theories about truth. I mentioned two of these theories, and then we will go back to Islamic understanding, or not Islamic as such, Muslim philosophers' understanding about correspondence theory, and then foundationalism, which is based on correspondence theory. Among Western philosophers, we have people that they are known as neo-positivists. Neo-positivists are in principle accepting the idea of positivists, but they have taken it further. Positivists were very much empirical. They prioritize empirical knowledge over any kind of knowledge, or they said, we don't know anything which is not empirical. For example, philosophy, because cannot be established through empirical means, then it's not known, it's not possible to be discovered. But neo-positivists, or what they call logical positivists, they took it further. They say that anything which cannot be empirically established, it's absurd. It has no meaning, meaningless. They have what they call the principle of verification. Anything that can be empirically, by 5 senses basically, verified either directly or in laboratory, either by observation or experience, etc. Anything that can be verified through 5 senses, through perception, is true and meaningful. Anything other than that, it's absurd. Even to say it's false, it's wrong. Because false is used for those things that empirical assessment says they are not right, they are not true. But at least they have meaning. For example, if someone claims something about physics or biology or chemistry that experience disproves. For example, if someone says water boils at 50 centigrade instead of 100 in normal condition, not in specific conditions. In normal condition, in just where we live, it's going to boil in 50 or 150 centigrade, less or more. This is not verified, this is rejected by experience, but at least it is meaningful. It's not absurd, it's false. Okay? But if you say, for example, wujud, existence, is primordial, is asil, or is graded, is tashkiki, they say this has no meaning. They don't say it's false, they say it has no meaning. Okay, so they have taken it further. Knowledge would be only then limited to sciences, but of course you know that even empirical sciences, they have lots of presuppositions which are not empirical. In philosophy of science, we study metaphysical principles, foundations, philosophical foundations for knowledge. Even, to say the least, and to go to the nearest thing, this principle of verification. Okay, this is very fundamental for them. Is this possible to be verified by perception, by hess, by experience, experiment, observation? No. This is a universal proposition. And perception can never establish a universal statement. Even if you say, for example, so far every case that we studied has been like this, it doesn't mean that in future it will be like this, or in another place is like this. Therefore, scientists can never make a general claim unless they use some philosophical arguments. For example, like Qadiyya al-Ittifaqi, or the principle of uniformity, that which says that nature always behaves the same. This is a philosophical claim. You have to argue for or against it philosophically. But without this, how can you say all cases of water, for example, are like this, are behaving like this? You haven't experienced future. You haven't experienced other places. So this principle of verification by itself is not proved through perception, through experience. Idrak, ihsas, mushahada, tajriba cannot prove this. So you are not consistent yourself. And also it is against common sense. Who says theology doesn't have meaning? Philosophy doesn't have meaning. Even mathematics, according to them, cannot have meaning unless it goes back to analytic propositions. But mathematics is not just analytic. So theology has meaning. For thousands of years, people are discussing theological issues, philosophical issues. They didn't understand anything about it. It was meaningless. Whether you, for example, believe God exists or God doesn't exist, you must understand something so that you can discuss. So even who say God doesn't exist, the atheists, if you tell them, you are talking about something that you don't understand, they feel offended. Even if they reject many theological claims of believers and monotheists, for example, but they don't say they are absurd. They say we understand, but for example, they have questions, objections, etc. So there is consensus among all different groups of people who have studied theology for or against traditional theological views. There is consensus that they understand, they make sense. Or philosophy the same. So it's against also common sense to say that they have no meaning. The other theory is theory of coherence. Ensejam. In Farsi we say ensejam. In Arabic also you can say ensejam, nazariyatul ensejam. Or in Farsi we can also say sazegari. The theory of cohesion or coherence says that we don't have self-evident principles, premises, which can be used as foundations, as basis, and then we can build upon them. They say there is no such a thing as self-evident proposition. We don't have basic, say, paye propositions. Everything is somehow at the same level. And we cannot judge about a single proposition. We need to take a combination, a set of propositions, and then see whether they are consistent. If they have self-conflict, they contradict each other, this is false. But if they all match each other, then this is true. You can, for example, introduce a theory in physics or chemistry, or even philosophy, religion, without proving that they are true. It's not that you can prove and establish by using badihiyat. No, you just present a set and say, look, this group of propositions, they are coherent, they are consistent. There is no contradiction inside. And of course, there is nothing outside that they contradict, because they don't believe there is truth outside. I mean, there is no badihiyat that you can establish, relation with them. Just make sure that what you say doesn't refute itself by involving some contradictions inside. Hope you can imagine that this is a very big shift. This means that we lose our touch with reality, with the external world. Just we need to say things in a consistent way. And sometimes then people can say more than one thing. Yeah? For example, about psychology, about, economy, about politics. Why, for example, this incident has happened? Why this revolution happened? So people can say different things. As long as what they say is coherent, then it can be true. And there can be more than one coherent explanation. So this is the idea of those who believe that instead of correspondence theory, we have to go for coherence and cohesion. The problem with this are many. We mentioned some of the problems. Number one, how do you establish that this theory is the right theory? Why we should accept this? If you say it is badihi, it's self-evident, you don't accept badihiyat, you don't accept self-evident things, because according to them, we have to forget badihiyat, we have to forget, foundations which are accepted by everyone. Just you start without foundations, and you have to just make sure that everything matches the rest. It's a matter of justification, not proving that something is true. So, how did you establish this? Or how do you expect us to accept this? If someone says, I don't accept this, I still want to go for correspondence theory, for example. Or I want to act like neo-positivists, I only accept based on empirical knowledge. How do you argue? How do you convince others? So if you say it's badihi, you don't believe badihi. If it's not badihi, so you have to prove it. Number two, everything, even a tale, a fiction, if it is consistent, then it will be true. And also there can be more than one. It leads to relativism and pluralism. In the course of history, we had some scientific ideas that were consistent, and even they were consistent with the rest of the information that they had. For example, according to Platonic theory about the earth and the skies, and the earth being the center and then surrounded by skies or aflak, and not being able to penetrate through these skies, etc. At that time, this was consistent inside and outside. It is interesting that even today, when they want to calculate, for example, sun or moon eclipses, still they can calculate, and they prefer to calculate based on the idea that the earth is center. It makes calculations much easier for them as they assume that earth is the center of the world. It doesn't affect calculations. But we know that truth is not this. But for people who believe in coherence, this is the truth. Although we know that truth is not this. Also, when it comes to a particular proposition, proposition A. You say this proposition is consistent and this proposition matches rest of our propositions. Okay, how do you understand this? Because correspondence is easy. For every proposition you can check. But when it is coherence, it's something that applies to all. So for one or two propositions, you cannot say they are coherent. You have to check, you have to see whether they match or not. If you say it's badihi that they match, you don't accept badiyat. If you say this would match with the B, B with C, C with D, then it would be tasalsul, endless regression. So, for sure, there is no, coincidence that these theories have come very late. This shows that human mind doesn't work in this way. This is against common sense. This is against our logic. But because they were not able to solve certain problems, they appeal to this. There is another theory which is pragmatistic. They say truth is what works. For example, we are not able to establish that the laws of physics are true. In their generality, universality are true. Maybe there are exceptions to them, maybe there are better theories, in future coming. But we suppose they are true because based on them we can produce cars, airplanes, trains, we can build roads, we can, make medicines. They are working, they have benefits, they have pragmatistic value. Anything which works for us, anything which produces some benefit, it's true. Again, this is a kind of compromise because yes, this can be a sign of truth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, أما الزبد فيذهب جفاء وأما ما ينفع الناس فيمكث في الأرض. What is false will go away, will disappears. What is true will remain. But Quran, instead of saying أما الحق فيمكث في الأرض, says وأما ما ينفع الناس. What benefits people would remain. Falsehood goes away, truth would remain. But instead of saying truth remains, says what benefits people. Because one sign of truth, one property, quality, attribute of truth is that it's beneficial. But if you say truth means to be beneficial, this is not the meaning of truth. Truth must match reality. Sometimes maybe something false can benefit to some extent. Later, when you discover the truth, you realize that, you missed lots of other benefits. But that false idea benefited to some extent. Like, for example, when they thought Earth is flat and Earth is the center of the world, these two things were working to some extent. They were benefiting in their traveling, in their calculations, in many things they benefited from these two. Although, if you know the whole story, you can benefit more. So this is another theory which is reducing truth to a matter of having some benefit, some practical benefit. Let us go back to correspondence theory and foundationalism. So according to the correspondence theory, truth is a matter of corresponding to the external reality. And when we say external reality, please remember, we said this before also, doesn't mean it has to be outside us. It has to be objective and external, because sometimes there are things inside us which are external in this sense. You know, we have wujud zihni and wujud khariji. Wujud khariji means external being, in contrast to mental being. But what is mental being? It's not that everything inside our nafs is mental. Wujud zihni is that type of existence which is relaying, which is reflecting like a mirror another thing. It has hekaya. Okay, it relays another thing. But inside us we can have wujud khariji as well. For example, the same mental image from another perspective is external being. For example, when you look at it as a kayf nafsani, as a psychic quality, it's inside us, inside our mind, and with its external being inside us. So our knowledge about our body is external knowledge. Our knowledge even about functions of soul, functions of mind, can be wujud khariji, or can be about something which is external. Its external being is in mind, but it is external. It's not wujud zihni. Okay, this is a very important point. So correspondence theory says that truth of a proposition of a qadiyya is to correspond to the external reality, wherever that external reality is. Is it inside, is it outside? You know, nafsul amr, as we were talking in Bidaya and Sharh Mansuma. Nafsul amr, whatever it is, nafsul amr for that. And then they say, for us, in order to establish that correspondence, either we establish through badihiyat or through nazariyat, which will at the end go back to badihiyat. So either we have self-evident knowledge about them, or we have a speculative knowledge, but we have to show how it goes back to badihiyat. This is called foundationalism. This approach, which is bringing everything as a construction from foundations up to the very detailed information that we may have. Everything should go back to the roots, to the foundations, which are badihiyat. And this has been very common idea among philosophers throughout the centuries, except, you know, recent, you know, centuries, you know, like 19th, 20th century. There have been people who had other ideas, but many people still have the same idea of foundationalism. Now, we have to show that we have badihiyat firstly, and secondly, these badihiyat can help us to make this construction of knowledge. How philosophy, theology, everything can go back to those badihiyat. This is the main task. So we said, we mentioned some theories here among Muslim philosophers. One is the idea that everything should go back to awwaliyat. So those propositions which don't need any argument, any reasoning, and just you conceive subject and predicate, and the relation between them is enough. This is called awwaliyat. So they say with the help of awwaliyat we can establish other things. For example, the principle of illiyah, causality, is one of awwaliyat. Every effect needs a cause, or every contingent needs a cause. Certainly not every being needs a cause, so you should be careful about formulation. Either you say every ma'lul has illah, or more precisely, every mumkin, kullu mumkinin lahu illah. Because if you say kullu ma'lulan lahu illah, it becomes tautology, or it becomes like analytic. It's very easy to say kullu mumkinin ma'lulan lahu illah, but you say kullu mumkinin lahu illah. Every contingent being needs illah. Or principle of contradiction, which in Muslim world they say imtina'un naqizain. They don't say asl tanaqus. In the Western culture they call it principle of contradiction. We say aslu imtina' tanaqus. So two contradictory things cannot exist together and cannot also be non-existent together. امتناع النقيضين is impossible, ارتفاع النقيضين is impossible, and اجتماع النقيضين is also not possible. So they try to make sure that everything goes back to awwaliyat. The other theory is theory of Ayatollah Misbah rahmatullah alayh, which tries to use ilm huzuri, not to prove that ilm huzuri is true, because we said that is not needed, that is not controversial. Using ilm huzuri to show how we can establish ilm husuli, which is certain. This is very important philosophical idea. Among our conceptual propositions, there are things that relate to something that through ilm huzuri we can check. This is the core of this idea. Ayatollah Misbah rahmatullah alayh wants to say that we don't want to establish ilm huzuri. That's without question. We want to use ilm huzuri in order to shed light on some of our conceptual propositions. How? Didn't we say that truth is a matter of correspondence to external reality? Now, if the external reality of ilm husuli is inside us, and we can have knowledge by presence about that reality, then this proposition can be checked without endangering the truth. When it's about outside, there's always problem if it is through senses. Although our senses are very much trusted, maybe more than 99% of the times, but sometimes they make mistakes. And even those mistakes can be verified. The good thing is that we know that, for example, if we put a pen into cup of water, it looks bending, although it's straight. We understand, we correct ourselves, and this is how we have been able to run this world. Yeah, it's not that we have very vague and mixture of true and false ideas about the world. No, we are able to understand and correct ourselves. But if it is just an act of seeing, an act of tasting or touching, there is possibility of mistake, because we don't have direct knowledge about the external world here. Yeah, I don't know what is there when I look at something in distance. I don't know, except through my eyes. So I don't have direct knowledge. Therefore, we say always what is outside, we say it's ma'luma bil araz, not ma'luma bil zat. Ma'luma bil zat is the mental image of that. Even if I'm talking to you, I don't have direct knowledge about you. My direct knowledge about the image of you in my mind. So there is an issue here. But imagine if instead of trying to know something outside, like a person in front of me or an object in the garden, if I am talking about something, I am thinking about something that exists in me, or at least instances of it are available to me directly. For example, if I say كل ممكن له علة, or كل ممكن متوقف على العلة, or is رابط or فقير محض بالنسبة للعلة, these are the things that I can check them inside myself through ilm huzuri, not ilm husuli. My knowledge of my stomach, I don't know my kidney, my heart, my brain, this is ilm husuli. Even if it is inside my body, it's ilm husuli. We are not talking about this kind of thing. But anything inside my mind, my soul, because knowledge is mujarrad, and therefore we are not talking about body. كل عاقل مجرد, كل معقول مجرد. So it's about nafs and knowledge that nafs has. In my mind, in my nafs self, I can assess كل ممكن له إلا, for example. I don't need to check outside. So for Ayatollah Misbah rahmatullah alayh, ilm huzuri and then vijdaniyat, which are based on ilm huzuri, are very important. He believes in the, of course, awwaliyat, but if awwaliyat were just there and nothing else, then he says it would be difficult to establish that they have realities. You could say كل ممكن له إلا, but is there any mumkin? Is there any ma'lul, any illa? If someone says, maybe this world doesn't exist at all, I say, okay, first we establish it inside us, and then we establish external world based on the impression that the external world makes on us. This is also very beautiful. Sometimes you feel very cold, sometimes you feel very hot. You check, you realize that this is not caused by you. It's not that I'm imagining. It's really cold. I am feeling being frozen. It's freezing cold. I'm getting frozen. Or I am very hot. I realize that this is because of something outside me. So it's not that I am the only thing that exists. There must be a world outside me that causes feeling hot or feeling very cold. I eat and, for example, enjoy very delicious taste. I realize that it's not like when I am imagining. Sometimes I imagine a delicious food. Sometimes I really find that feeling of eating delicious food. So, for this idea, vejdaniyat are proved to be true and can help us. Self-evident principles of logic, again, they are accepted and can help us, because for logic everything is inside our mind, as available. If you want to understand the laws of logic, you don't need to go outside. You don't need to look at the external world outside. The realities are inside. For analytics, propositions the same, and for avvaliyat. So avvaliyat, vejdaniyat, and plus self-evident laws of logic, and also analytic propositions. So please think about these two theories, and inshallah next session I will try to take this discussion further and see whether we need to add something to it or it's enough, etc. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Okay, inshallah we will start after a short break the second class. Of course I don't know you are there, but in some of our brothers and sisters from UK are for the second class as well. التماس دعاء في أمان الله.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. أحسنتم. خدا حافظ.